Julia's Eyes is the latest horror movie to come out of Spain and is produced by Guillermo Del Toro, the director of Blade 2, Hellboy 2, and Kronos, Mimic, The Devil's Backbone. He is a very talented horror director, and this film's only produced by him, but his fingerprints are all over it. Now, the plot follows the character of Julia, who has a degenerative disease leading to the loss of her eyesight. Now, her sister has recently committed suicide. Not a spoiler because it happens in the first 5 minutes, and she believes that somebody may be responsible, that perhaps her sister was in fact murdered. So she wants to explore her sister's past, present, and basically get to know the people who her sister surrounded herself with, and try to find out who may be responsible for her death. Now, helping her is her husband, and all the while she's gradually losing her eyesight. So that's the basic plot of the film. Straight away, this movie has a very distinctive style and visual flair. Now, the film itself begins with Julia's sister hanging herself, and this scene's very kind of well done, and it's clear from this scene that it's not suicide. She has been murdered, and it's this hook that really brings you into the film and makes you want to follow Julia's journey in discovering who is responsible. Now, it is the visual style that makes this film, in my opinion. The reason being is, visually, the director has managed to convey the frustration that partially sighted or blind people must feel on a daily basis. There are certain scenes once Julia has almost completely lost her vision, where you don't see any characters' faces. Now, this is where the film excels. This film is frightening. It has scares in it that kept me up a couple of nights after I'd watched it. There is one scene where Julia goes to a shower room full of blind women, and they can smell her, basically. They know she's there, and they kind of go like, who are you, and grab her, and it's quite frightening. And then they say, who's the man with you? And, she replies, what man? The man, there's a man with you and he stood behind you, we can smell him. And that leads into a foot chase, and that is one of the big scares in the film. To tell you what happens isn't really to spoil it, because it is the visual feel of the film that makes it frightening. And basically, all the way through the film, all the way through the narrative, in the first 2 acts, we are basically introduced to a load of characters who could all be suspects, and they are all aroused suspicion in one way or another. And the whole idea behind this film is that the killer is somebody who is almost invisible. He's such a slight presence, so quiet, that people won't remember them after they've left a room. And that's basically the crux of the film, is how they treat this character. Now, Julia, once she actually loses her eyesight, which is going to happen because it's happening gradually throughout the film, in these scenes, you no longer see anybody else's face. You have to remember them in the same way that Julia has to remember them. You see shots of people from the neck down, or the feet, the legs, the hands. You don't see anybody's face again for like a big chunk of the movie. And this leads to some of the scariest, tensest scenes I've seen in a film in the last few years. Honestly, this film is frightening as anything you're likely to see. Especially when she is with the killer and she gets her eyesight back, and she has to pretend to be blind, and the killer is looking at her, trying to test her as to whether or not she can actually see what they are doing. And these scenes are something that Alfred Hitchcock would have come up with. They are so well done and frightening. I honestly cannot convey just how well done these scenes are. However, once it's revealed who the killer is and their motives, the film completely falls apart. Basically, the script doesn't know where to go after the big reveal. There is no explanation behind the killer's actions, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but what little hints there are at their motivation don't make any sense. And certain characters who we've met before who might be in on it, some of their big reveals just don't make any sense. It's almost like there are big chunks of the script missing in the third act, and it literally does try its hardest to undo everything the rest of the film has done. Now, luckily, it doesn't quite succeed, and I think it is worth watching this movie because it is frightening. The first two acts are brilliant, they really are. It's only after the big reveal that it kind of falls apart. The performances across the board are great. I really enjoyed this film. I just can't believe how bad the kind of third act is after the reveal, you know, the explanation of the motives and things like this. It just doesn't make any conceivable sense, and it's just kind of crap. Like the script really does hinge on this killer's motives, and they completely mess it up, which is such a shame because up until that moment it was one of my favourite horror films of recent years. But having said that, I would recommend it because visually it's unlike anything you've seen. And to be honest, once you lose your sight and you don't see any other characters' faces, this is where the film really excels at building tension, because you don't know who to trust. Just like Julia doesn't. You don't know who to trust at all. You don't know if what a character is telling her is reliable or not, because you can't see if they're telling the truth. And it's for these reasons that I would highly recommend Julia's Eyes. It's just a shame that the script falls apart at the end, but I can kind of forgive that for just how visually unique and interesting the rest of the film is. And I do think Guillermo Del Toro, as a producer, is producing some great horror films. I really like The Orphanage that he did like a couple of years ago, and he's producing Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. I nearly called it Are You Afraid of the Dark, but he's producing Don't Be Afraid of the Dark this year, which I really want to see with Guy Pearce. I would recommend Julia's Eyes. It is an interesting horror movie, and it is frightening. It's just a shame it falls apart at the end, but if you can get past that, you'll have a lot of fun with it. So that's Julia's Eyes.